Hello and welcome. I'm Maria Ressa. This is Rappler Talk. Sitting with us today is Senator Ping Lacson. He is once chief of the Philippine National Police. He also was a fugitive at different times. So he has seen this play out, the rule of law on both sides of the fence. Senator Lacson, thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Maria, and thank you for guesting me on Rappler.
No, thank you. He is also on Twitter. The Twitter account is, your Twitter account is?
I am Ping Lacson.
I am Ping Lacson, so throw us any questions you have. Hashtag Rappler Talk. Senator Lacson, yesterday Amnesty International released a report that talked about the economics of killing, the economics of death, and estimated, this is according to a source in the police for them, that the police are rewarded for up to 15,000 pesos for every person they killed. And that if they arrested them, they would get nothing. So there was incentive to kill. How did you react to that report?
Well, I have yet to read the 66-page report. No, what we know as of now is what we read in the news. No, and I think it's incumbent upon Amnesty International, because these are very serious accusations or allegations. So it's incumbent upon them, the onus is on them, to back their allegation with hard evidence. If not, then as a Filipino, I will have to stand up for my own country, for the Philippine National Police, and for my government. No? But if they will come up with hard evidence, then also it's incumbent upon us to join the condemnation. And as a lawmaker, we should do something to address those accusations.
As the former chief of the Philippine National Police, could something like this have happened?
I cannot believe that. You know, in the first place, where will the funds come from? You know, definitely, it could not have come from the GAA, from the General Appropriations Act, because there's no way those funds or the spending could be justified under the national budget.
And yet, from July 1 until January, the end of January, you're talking about more than 7,000 people killed in this by the Philippine National Police, right? That is an alarming number. Why are people not more alarmed?
That's a good point, no? Because Amnesty International, I think, no, I heard that they're referring to the 7,000 deaths as attributed to the police themselves.
Yes.
That is not quite true, because we were shown statistics, no, by the police, and it's 1/3 and 2/3. You know? 1/3 were killed in so-called legitimate police operations, quote unquote.
Correct.
And the remaining 2/3 were, perpetrated by the so-called vigilantes.
Correct.
So it is not quite correct or accurate to attribute all 7,000 killings to the police.
I agree with that, but in the end, I think part of it is because responsibility for law and order rolls up to the police. So even the vigilante killings, as you know, as the
it is their responsibility.
It's still the responsibility of the police. So,
but they referred to all the 7,000 killings as extrajudicial killings.
I see. Right.
When the universal definition of extrajudicial killings, as far as I know, is are killings perpetrated by government authorities.
Correct. State-sponsored.
State-sponsored.
Yes.
So to accuse the police of perpetrating all of 7,000 killings, which is not the case.
Right.
I think that tells a lot, no?
Understood.
About the Amnesty International report.
So you're talking, but you're still talking about a sizable number. A third of that is still sizable, right?
Yeah.
And that is within the police. So I guess the question then, when you look at that context to what the police has admitted to and what Bato himself has said is, with 7,000 people killed, whether it is vigilante or whether it's police, is there a breakdown of law and order in the Philippines now?
Well, yes and no, because the president himself, has been very passionate, and it's a good thing that there's a wake-up call brought about by the killing of this Korean national, and the president instructed the Philippine National Police to get off the illegal drugs operations. So I think that's a good development, because now the PNP leadership can address these scalawags in the ranks.
So there is an admission that there are scalawags in the ranks in that.
Oh, that's a given. Even during my time.
Yes.
I still remember in 2 months I was able to impose punishment on something like 2,000 police officers. dismissal, suspension, reprimand, admonition, all sorts of punishment. So, admittedly, there are scalawags in the ranks.
Could they have been given more power when President Duterte essentially said that if they're shot in the line of duty, it's okay? Could they have been empowered more?
Well, not power, but encouragement.
Encouraged, yes.
Yeah. Those pronouncements, I think, were ill-advised, no? Because the president was even, what do you call this?
That's almost like carte blanche. It's
Carte
waving
blanche,
a red flag in front of
waving a carte blanche authority.
Yes.
And he was even assuring the police officers concerned
Yes.
that he was ready to pardon them. Pro forma pardon forms that he was ready to sign. He even went to that extent. That would embolden the police to just do their thing,
Yes.
without thinking of any accountability.
When you were chief of police, how did you keep the balance between letting your men know you were behind them and yet making sure that they would know if they did something wrong, you would go after them?
Well, immediately I started internal cleansing. I addressed the internal discipline of the police. I remember even in my assumption speech, one of my pronouncements was to return all recovered carnap motor vehicles without question. No? They could return it incognito
Yes.
or official or formally, and I would not even investigate them.
Yes,
But
yes.
after the 2-week period, I would do something, which I did. And after 2 weeks, we were practically, just getting vehicles under the flyovers near Camp Crame. And we accounted for 650 motor vehicles. And then I started my anti-cotton, the anti-mulcting operations.
Correct,
It was
correct.
very effective because they knew that I was serious,
Yes.
and we were really taking action against those people.
I do want to go back to this because, of course, that also was, you've lived through so much. But I want to go back to the present day, which is about Oplan Tokhang,
Yes.
and then in terms of your own actions to it. You tweeted something interesting. You talked about how the war on drugs is essentially suspended for now, right? The president suspended it. And that night, there were no killings. And you tweeted something interesting. You said this was a coincidence.
It's a commendable coincidence.
Yeah,
That's
I mean, what do you
tweeted,
mean
yeah.
by that? A commendable coincidence. Are
it-
you being tongue-in-cheek? Are you being serious?
Well, it was a double-edged statement, actually, because I was just, sort of teasing the police. How come when General De La Rosa gave instructions that we're off the anti-illegal drugs operations, all of a sudden, even the vigilantes seemed to have listened to him. So, but, at the same time, we're happy that no deaths were reported
Yeah, absolutely.
initially.
Yes.
But I heard that 4 deaths were reported overnight.
On social media, also people reacted that it took a South Korean's death to stop the
Yeah.
killings. What about the thousands of Filipinos who died? How do you respond to something like that?
Well, the South Korean national's death was not an isolated case, and I showed it even during the committee hearing.
Right.
I showed video footage of policemen planting evidence and even robbing
Right.
their victims, and even reported some information coming from Mr. Risita Angsi, the anti-kidnap crusader.
Yes.
And I think at least 12 victims reported to her.
Yes.
Similar operations against them, Tokhang for ransom.
What made you decide to stop the hearings?
No, because the president took positive action.
But you won't
I'm not
go back?
stopping.
You're
Yes,
not? Okay.
we just suspended the hearings to just pause for a while,
Okay.
step back, and find out how the latest president's instruction plays out.
Will play out.
Yeah.
Oh, so please correct me if I'm wrong with these numbers. At one point, we felt that the numbers reported by the police seemed to show the death toll per night as high as 44 people killed a night. It went down to 38 people killed
Yeah,
a night. And then
17,
around
yeah.
December, it was around 8 a night. Then it went to 5 a
Yeah.
night, right? So it was declining, but it was still a lot. In terms of accountability, What do you see happening next? Will the people who killed these 7,000 people be held
Well,
accountable?
the police must really seriously address this problem, because I even reminded General De La Rosa and even the other police officers who went with him when they visited me in my office. You should show that show that you are solving these DUIs, death under investigation. Otherwise, it will be perceived, rightly or wrongly, that you are behind these killings.
Yes.
And according to them, their crime solution rate was something like 21%. And I told them it's very low.
Right.
We're talking here of, at the time, 4,000 DUIs. And when you talk of 20%, that's really, that reflects inefficiency of law enforcement.
Do you see, did he work for you? Did John De La Rosa work for you?
Yeah.
He did, right?
He was my task group commander in Mindanao, because I had 3 task groups then under the Presidential Anti-Organized Crime Task Force. And I've already mentioned this, that I was surprised that he's a very much different De La Rosa now than during those days, because he was then chief inspector.
Yes.
But whenever I would give him a mission, a task, he would just quietly deliver the results. And he was very different at the time than how the demeanor,
Right.
The demeanor is very different.
What do you think of the revival of the Philippine constabulary?
I wouldn't agree with that, simply because the Constitution mandates that we should have one police force that is national in scope and civilian in character.
Correct.
If we revive the Philippine Constabulary, there will be a big problem on jurisdiction. There will be overlapping.
Yes.
Because at the time when the police was still localized, no problem with the jurisdiction, with the question of jurisdiction with the Philippine Constabulary, because the Philippine Constabulary is nationwide or national in scope. But now, since we already have the police, national police, then unless the president is or envisions to have a Philippine Constabulary in the mold of a national guard, the concept of a national guard, that can only come in when there is widespread violence or calamity.
Correct.
But that will be a big drain on the budget.
Right.
And we cannot afford that.
Right. President Duterte, even when he was still mayor, when he was campaigning, had said that he would defend the police because they're in the front line. And if they, he said this often, right? Nanlaban. Since then, we talked earlier that seemed to have, that could encourage the bad guys in the police. And we know that there are bad guys. Nanlaban now is a common refrain.
Yeah.
How did you see that, and how do we break that down again for accountability?
Well, I think the president neglected to remind the police that they should operate within the rule of law. They were so emboldened because of the pronouncements that, as you said, carte blanche. They were given their own free will to do practically anything, and he even promised to protect them.
And if you believe Amnesty International, they were paid for the deaths.
I have yet to see hard evidence, proof to show, because they mentioned a police officer as one of their witnesses.
Yes.
I want to see the statement and some evidence presented by the police officer that they mentioned, because they did not even mention the name.
Agreed.
So how can we find out if they are really they really talked to a police officer?
In terms of rule of law, you mentioned rule of law. Over the years, rule of law, that definition keeps changing. How would you define rule of law today in the Philippines?
Well, within the criminal justice system, you can only kill a person. The only justification for killing a person is in self-defense. There's no other justification or legal justification. When the police goes beyond the parameters of self-defense, then that's not within the rule of law.
Let's go back to your history. You talked about what you had done as chief of police. One of the accusations against you then was the Kuratong Balelan, that you yourself took a strong hand against criminals. Where did you draw the line when you were there? And again, it's funny how much the tide has turned, right? Now we've had, in 6-7 months, thousands of people
let's put it this way, self-defense, the way we see it in the movies, is very much different in real life. when we're chasing a group of bandits, a group of thieves, armed robbers, and we shout at them to raise their arms, in surrender. And instead of seeing raised arms, you see barrels of guns. What would you do? You still wait for them to shoot at you, and then you roll like a movie hero, a movie actor, and then shoot back.
Yes.
No, that won't happen in real life. When you see imminent danger, and you have the opportunity to protect yourself, defend yourself, or even your companions, then I would tell my men, shoot, stupid.
Yes.
It's better to be a living, villain, if I may say so, than a dead dolt, no?
Yes.
Because when you're there inside the coffin, you imagine your comrades talking about you. Why did you not shoot first? So.
Now, in this context today, you've actually been critical of some of the moves that you've pointed out that some killings may have been done with impunity.
Yes.
How bad is it in your mind?
Well, right now, I think it's worse than the former chief's PNP, than the former PNP that I knew, no? Because right now, because they're so encouraged in the wrong way by the president's pronouncements. And I think it's not too late to correct that, no? And I think the president has realized, judging from his recent action, the action taken after the Korean national's death, then I think there will be a lot of restructuring and new instructions to be dished out to the police.
And again, you've been here for a very long time, but why was it okay with the Filipino public?
Because they're tired of injustice. They're tired of, our criminal justice system.
Correct.
The wheels of justice, grind so slowly, and they're fed up. So I think, and that's the reason why the president is still rating very high.
Very high. Yeah.
After 6-7 months, he's still up there.
Yes.
So why? In spite of all the reported, summary executions and all these nasty incidents or killings,
right.
But he's still up there.
From martial law days after Marcos, it took a decade to reinstill discipline within the PNP. The constabulary was abolished. And that decade, you were part of that decade, putting in that discipline.
Yeah.
Now that Pandora's box has been opened and that encouragement, that carte blanche is there, what impact do you think this will have on the police?
Well, it's about them to look back and review all the incidents for the past 7 months. And I think they're doing that right now.
Great.
In fact, that's the reason why the president disbanded all the anti-illegal drugs units.
Yes.
To give the police opportunity to reform themselves first, and then give them instructions again to engage in anti-illegal drugs operations. I think that's a good move. That's the reason why I suspended the hearings, because I wanted to wait and see.
And encourage that move, right? I mean, in a way,
that's encouraging, actually.
Yes. In terms of these killings now, how clean can the police ever be? I mean, that's a mildly. You were there when you were trying to clean it up. So now the police will investigate itself in these 7,000 killings. But how difficult will this be? What should be the next steps?
A lot has to do with leadership.
Okay.
Because I have always maintained leadership by example is second to none. There's no substitute to it, because policemen normally follow their leader, even in terms of corruption, committing shenanigans. If they see that their commander is too lax to enforce discipline on them, then they will just take it easy and abuse their authority. But if they know that the commander is strict and leading the troops by example, then they will follow.
You mentioned John De La Rosa has changed from the time he was under your command to now.
All of a
how
sudden
changed how?
Well, all of a sudden he became a kengkoy, because at the time he was very serious, he was humble, but I can still vouch for his integrity. I knew him back then. He was an honest policeman, and he was really very diligent. He was hardworking, and he did things very quietly, not so much fanfare. That's why I'm surprised to see him watching concerts, And I told him, if I were chief PNP, and I would be in Las Vegas, and then something is happening, some crisis is happening here.
Right.
I would have gotten off my seat and
Come back.
take the first available flight back.
So if you were chief of PNP again, how would you clean up the PNP now?
In the same manner that I did it in 1999 and 2000. In 3 months, I was able to reform the police. I believe.
Yes.
I'm not being. Of course, I'm subjective, But people would tell me even now that gone were the days, when the policemen were disciplined. I even imposed, physical fitness, the discipline of being, speak and span.
Yes. Yes,
I remember that.
And you think that what impact in the long term do you think this period of time, the 7 months now, will have? How long will it take to recover?
I'm confident that De La Rosa will be able to deliver this time, after the president has told them to, hey, halt and think a while, and then you proceed when you have reformed yourselves.
War on drugs. In the last administration, it was a number 8 concern when you look at the surveys, and then it became the number 1. During the campaign, it became the number 1 issue. Did the last administration neglect it? If you look at the PDEA results,
I think it's perception has a lot to do with ranking drugs among the concerns, among the priorities, because right now we never realized that this is this bad.
Right.
It is this bad.
Is it that bad? It is.
It is.
Okay.
Even before, even during the previous administration, they were already estimating 4 million, 5 million.
Yes.
And almost all
2010.
barangays
Yes.
are classified as drug influenced or drug affected.
Yes. But the numbers vary. I guess we can talk about the actual numbers in terms of moving forward now. What do you see? What would you like to see happen? Your best case and worst case scenarios.
The best case scenario is for the police to be reformed, in the truest sense of the word, not just palliatives being applied. And I'd like to see a sustained disciplinary mechanism and disciplinary action on the part of the PNP leadership, and even on the part of the commander-in-chief. And I'd like to see a police force that is trusted, that is, respected, not just feared,
Yes.
But I'd like to see a PNP that's really comparable to the best police organizations in the whole world.
Politics. In terms of politics now, again, what we've seen is a super majority in both in Congress and in the Senate.
Well, that's the culture of politics in the Philippines, Whenever a new administration comes in, then all of a sudden, everybody wants to join the party. I'm independent, by the way. I've never joined a political party since 2003, I think, because I think that it's just a temporary alliance,
Yes.
And that's
Yes.
what's happening now. It's better to be independent because you can do your thing. You're not bound by all the controls and all the rules imposed by your party.
Are people afraid to speak out?
Now,
Yes.
yes and no, because we have a president who is a very good and a nasty counterpuncher, and that contributes a lot to why people don't want to take a punch at the president. It's very much similar to Donald Trump, by the way. They're nasty and ruthless counterpunchers.
Yes.
And that could be good, that could be bad, because, But I think the president has learned to adjust little by little. And I'd like to see him as a multi-dimensional president instead of a, single
Issue.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's always drugs, and now it's shifting to anti-corruption. But that's an even more important thing to
Battle.
address.
Yes, we support that completely. Sir, my last question is, I'm personally curious. Again, I started by saying you've been on both sides of the law. When you decided to be a fugitive and then that time period, looking back on it, why did you decide to do that, and what did you learn from this?
Yes, first I learned to know who my real friends are. No? Of course, that's a given. Because when you're down there, that's the time that you will realize who are the true friends, who are not the real ones. Well, I went into hiding because, we were pleading to inhibit the judge because I knew that she was an applicant for promotion.
Yes.
And the one who would sign her promotion papers was the one running after me, for 9 years.
Yes.
And thinking that my goose was cooked, definitely. And I knew that I was not in any way involved in the accusation. So I decided, but before I did that, I asked my lawyer, is it okay for a respondent to be scarce, to be not physically present, and the case would still move on?
Yes.
And he told me, yes. Are you sure? I asked him that because it's going to be a dead end if it was not the case, because the case would not prosper, would not move. And he told me he was very sure because that was his case. There was a new jurisprudence. I think it was a 2-week-old Supreme Court ruling wherein he was actually the lawyer, so he was very sure. So that's when I decided, why would I go to jail? I won't allow myself to be, seen by former President Arroyo, behind bars even for a minute, for something I did not do. And I was proven right because Mancao himself, he was described as an unreliable, if not incredible witness. And he even, confided to me before he was promised with so many things by the past administration. GMA sent General Prestosa, who used to be PSG commander, Oscar Calderon, Chief PNP, who used to be the superior of Mancao, promising him promotion to Chief Superintendent or Police General, reinstatement, and then promotion, and then the family would be resettled in Singapore. He even told me that, and he was asking my permission that he would do it only for a temporary arrangement, and then afterwards he would retract. And I told him, would you believe that those things will be delivered? And after that, he even called me up again. Yes, you're correct, sir. I consulted with my wife because I know the wife personally also because he served under me, Cesar Mancao. And he told me, yes, your advice is correct, sir. I will not enter into this agreement. That's why I was surprised, and all of a sudden, he executed the affidavit.
Yes.
So why would I allow myself to be behind bars? So I just decided, to be scarce, but the case still moved, and fortunately, I won the case.
So it goes back to this whole thing that power corrupts.
Yeah.
And that
it corrupts absolutely.
And that the justice system is flawed.
Yeah,
exactly the same thing. Has it improved?
I don't think so. We still have the same problems with our criminal justice system. That's the reason why, going back to your previous question, people are, still clap their hands when they see killings of, supposed to be drug dealers. But, it's an ugly scene to see people in sleepers.
Yes.
We have yet to see high-profile drug lords or drug dealers, being encountered by police officers. Of course, there are a few, but even their killings put a big question mark on the police operations, like Mayor Espinosa, Jaguar, or the drug lord from Cebu.
Yes.
They were killed under questionable circumstances.
Yes. We'll look forward to those investigations. Senator Lacson, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Maria.
We've been speaking with Senator Lacson on the extrajudicial killings, on the killings that are on record, Amnesty International's report. I'm Maria Ressa. Thank you for joining us.